We're holding in the middle of Perek Yud Zayin, second half of chapter 17, Pasuk Yud Daled. Poter mayim reshit madon velifnei gala hariv netosh. The beginning of strife is like letting out of water, and before you are exposed, abandon the quarrel, or before it is exposed. It is talking about quarrels. Quarrels are compared to mayim, waters gushing out of a dam. All you need is a small hole, and the whole thing will burst open and all the water will come out. In this pasuk, Shlomo Melech is trying to emphasize the dangers of any quarrels, even the smallest ones, because they may be small in the beginning, but they can explode and eventually lead to an uncontrollable rage and to something that you may never have expected that it would occur, something which is difficult later to control. So he compares it to poter mayim. Reshit madon is to letting out a little bit of water, making a small hole in the dam. And you know what happens with a small hole? Eventually it grows. And that's what happens with any argument. There is a commentary that brings down something very interesting, that whoever is insulted, somebody insults him, tries to make him angry, and instead of responding, instead of quarreling about it, he keeps quiet. Mesalek me'atzmo me'araot. By just keeping quiet in an argument, you are saving yourself 100 bad things. And he learns that out from the word madon. The word madon in Hebrew, the gematria, the numerical equivalent of the word madon is 100. Mem is 40, right? Dalet is 4, Vav is 6, so we have 50, and Nun is 50. So he says, you want to save yourself 100 terrible consequences that can happen from an argument? Keep quiet. That's the always best. Not always can you keep quiet, but many times that's the best solution on how to avoid it deteriorating into something worse. But he's also talking about the initiator. He's not just talking about a quarrel in general, but poter mayim, the one who begins it, is the one that brings this about. He is the one that's letting all of this water loose, and water that is let loose cannot be taken back. So therefore he adds the words, B'lifnei hitgala, hariv netosh, before it becomes exposed, so before it becomes very, very big, even if you're not a part, especially if you're not a part of it, you're just listening to it, and you're maybe tempted to get involved, netosh means abandon the scene. Get out of it. Don't try to get involved. And many times it is tempting for us to get involved in some situation where people are quarreling, where things may get worse. Unless you're a real mediator, then obviously it's a mitzvah to make peace. But that's not everybody's intention when they get involved in a quarrel. They tend to take sides, they tend to express their opinion, and of course things get worse and worse. So he recommends quieting a quarrel. He recommends staying out of it if you haven't been a part of it. And obviously he discourages anyone from thinking of doing this, or of going in that direction, of making something into a big scandal. Usually not too much good comes out of it. Rabbis talk about mahloket l'shem shamayim, which is a whole different idea. When you have arguments about something for the sake of heaven, trying to figure out what the halacha is, that is a whole different atmosphere. That is a whole different animal, I guess we can call it that. It's done in a different spirit. But otherwise, arguments, that's what all the courts are all about these days, right? That's when we have so many lawyers, defense, prosecution, because of all these arguments. People cannot settle things on their own. And some of them become very, very nasty. Rabbis also use this pasuk regarding settlements, arbitration. In Jewish law, when two individuals come to dispute a particular matter, the dayan or the bedin is supposed to encourage them to compromise, even without even hearing their ta'anot, their complaints. The first thing is, do you, Reuven and Shimon, want to settle for a compromise? We will work something out that is good for the two sides without looking in the Shulchan Aruch who is right and who is wrong. That is encouraged for a variety of reasons. Reason number one, the simple reason, is first of all, the Dayanim may be wrong if they were not to know the halacha. Some situations are very complex as to who is right and who is wrong, and what are the damages, what is there to do. So if you're asking for a din Torah, and you're very explicit about, I want din Torah, sometimes that may be the best thing, but sometimes that may be very difficult. So that's one reason why the Dayanim should encourage a peshara, some sort of compromise. Another reason for a peshara, for a compromise, is that let's assume that the judges arrive at a true, honest conclusion, of course, that Reuven is right and Shimon is wrong. Okay, Shimon, you owe Reuven all this money, or whatever. What did they accomplish? What they accomplish is in pointing out who is right and who is wrong. Do you think Shimon will still be friends with Reuven? No. That is exactly what the Gemara says happened during Churban Bayit Sheni. The rabbis tell us something incredible. Why was the temple destroyed? Amongst other things, there are various factors. One of them is Al Sheddanu Din Torah, because they judged according to the law of the Torah. Wow, that's good. Because they judged according to the Torah, that Bet HaMikdash should be destroyed. The answer is yes. Because they went strictly by the letter of the law, and they said who is right and who is wrong, Reuven and Shimon continued to be enemies. And that is why the Sinat Hinam, the baseless hatred, never disappeared. If people were not settling matters in a friendly way, by suggesting compromises, by having them shake hands and embrace, instead of, you're right and you're wrong, that's it, that's what the halacha says in Shulchan Aruch, you don't like it, tough. Well, that's not good. So that is why the halacha says that one should encourage all sides, when you enter the court of Bedin, compromise. Are you willing to compromise? We will work something out. If you're not, then obviously we have to figure out what the halacha is. And the ones who are disputing, depending on the case, many times should think about it, that perhaps this is the best solution. It may just be a compromise. And in that way they can continue to be friends. Once the rabbis have heard the two sides, it's still not too late to reach a compromise. They can still say, okay, we've heard you, and now we still recommend compromise. It's possible. Once the judges have sat down and deliberated and figured out, according to the halacha, who is right and who is wrong, they can no longer suggest compromise. It's too late. Once you know who is right and who is wrong, you can't tell the one who is right, compromise, because you already know he's right. That's stealing from him. If you already know the halacha, if you've already investigated and you know who is right, if it's black and white, then you can no longer enforce or suggest even peshara. It's too late. So that is what is insinuated in this pasuk. V'lifnei dgala ariv netosh. Before you go deep into the discussion, into this problem, into this matter, let go of it. In other words, suggest a compromise, because once you're involved, once you're investigating, once you look up the halacha and you know it, then you can no longer suggest compromise. So, compromise is something which is, I think, very much highly thought of. In other words, people, not only in Jewish circles, but in non-Jewish circles, this is what they attempt to do to make everybody happy, which is very, very hard. But one has to do his best to settle matters in a friendly way, so people can continue living their lives without all the distress and the ill feelings that they have. Because how life is not so long. Why go on with all these terrible feelings of disappointment, of an imaginary loss, or whatever? Settle it in the best way possible. Another point that is brought out over here in this pasuk, Poter Maim, Reshit Madon. Madon comes from the word din also, judgment. The beginning of one's judgment upstairs for a man, Lahar Me'avesim, after 120, is, did you learn Torah? Did you set aside time for Torah? After all, you had time to read the LA Times. You had time for the internet. You had time for all the nonsense. So did you set aside some time for the Torah? Reshit Madon, that's like the beginning of the din, is on Torah, Dafka Torah. And it's important that it be on Torah, because had a person learned Torah, his system of values and priorities in life would have been completely different. They would tell him, you know why this question is important? Because had you learned Torah, had you learned enough Torah, then you would have made this mistake, then your life would have looked like this. Your whole life would have been transformed had it been a Torah life. So that is why that is one of the reasons why that's the first question. However, there's a question on this idea. Our tradition says, I think this is a question of Tosafot, our tradition says that the first question, there's several questions upstairs, is Nasata venatata be'emunah. Did you do or did you handle yourself in business matters in an honest way? Were you honest? That is the first question. So how could we say that the Torah is the first question according to this pasuk? And the answer is as follows. There's two judgments, and there are two interviews, I guess we can call it. But two times one is judged. One is in this world and one is in the world above, after he departs from this world. When one departs from this world, yes, they will ask him about his business. Was he honest or not? But in this world, there's a continuous judgment for those who don't learn Torah. If they waste their time, they receive a reminder in the form of Yisurim, of some sort of painful experience. And that painful experience is a kapara, it's an atonement for the Bitul Torah, and it's a reminder that one is wasting his time. So many times, one who is capable of learning Torah more than anybody else, because he's capable, he would receive a reminder, some sort of reminder that you haven't been doing enough learning Torah. And that is his mini judgment, his mini madon, his mini din, judgment in this world concerning Torah. So both ideas are correct. The beginning of judgment upstairs also has to do with Nasata venatata be'emunah, do you do business honestly? And Torah is, of course, eventually one of the important questions asked too. But in this world, it takes priority. It is something that one is continuously giving judgment on. There's a commentary that explains that the connection between this pasuk and there's a connection between this pasuk and the following pasuk. So maybe first let's read the following pasuk. Matzdik rasha u'marshia tzadik to'avat Adonai gam shenehem. Here he translates, he who vindicates the wicked and condemns the righteous, both are an abomination to Hashem. Finding a tzaddik guilty or finding a rasha innocent. In court, this is a pasuk that is really talking about judges who need to be careful in the proceedings, in investigating something, in interrogating the witnesses. You don't want to make a mistake to find the tzaddik, the innocent, guilty, or to find the rasha, the guilty one, innocent. One who is not careful, to'avat Hashem gam shenehem, Hashem does not like either one of the two. Whatever mistake you make, finding the rasha tzaddik is also not good. Just as bad as finding a tzaddik and rasha. The connection between the two pasukim perhaps can be that in the first pasuk we spoke about fights, arguments, quarrels. When there's a tremendous amount of quarrels and nobody is calm, that is the recipe for mistakes. That is the recipe that for people not thinking straight and coming up with all sorts of ideas. When one is arguing, one has to argue in a calm way, if possible in a logical way. And that's not very easy. But that leads to mistakes. Judges have to be cool-headed and not emotional. Definitely not biased. Next pasuk. Lama ze mechir biyad k'si liknot chokhmah velev ayin. Also a very famous pasuk that is mentioned in the Gemara. Why is there a price That's how he translates, in the fool's hand to buy wisdom when his heart is not there. Why is the fool making such an effort to buy wisdom when he's not really interested? One of the meanings of this pasuk is as follows. When it comes to wisdom, rabbis tell us, Reshit chokhmah yirat Hashem. Kol sheyirat cheto kodemet lechokhmato, chokhmato mitkayemet. If one's fear of God comes before his wisdom, then his wisdom will last and will be effective. He will gain something from that wisdom. But if all he does is acquire wisdom, learns, reads, and does not work on his midot, on his character, then all that wisdom that he acquires will not do him any good. So that is what he says in different words. Why is there a price? In other words, why is the fool going to all this effort to acquire chokhmah when he's not even interested in working in himself? The tachlit, the purpose of all chokhmah is to teach us, to guide us how to be better people. It's not just to fill our heads with data, with information. Right? The Torah is a blueprint for life. Judaism is not just a religion, it's a way of life. And to know how to conduct oneself, one needs to learn Torah. Without it, one does not know how to conduct himself properly. There are many people who are kind-hearted by nature, who will do things automatically. That's fine, but not in everything. One cannot do everything on his own without learning Torah. And part of the Torah is mitzvot ben adam lechaverom, and part of it is mitzvot ben adam lamakom. Mitzvot that concern us and our fellow Jews, and mitzvot that concern us and Hashem. In the area of mitzvot ben adam lechavero, a great deal of it depends on the midot. Midot meaning character, our personality, our traits. Are we angry? Do we take revenge? Do we bear a grudge? And so forth. So he says, so why would the fool go to the effort of acquiring chokhmah if his mind or his heart is not there, meaning that he's not serious about it? The rabbis compare this attitude of one who's really not so serious about the chokhmah for its ultimate purpose, which is to refine one's character. They compare it to someone who was given a set of keys to the safe in a house. But he was not given the keys to the house. What good is it that he has the keys to the safe in the house if he cannot get into the house? You follow me? The keys to the safe is the chokhmah. But the keys to the house is the yirat Hashem. If he does not have the keys to enter the house, what good will it do him if he has the keys to the safe? He has all this chokhmah. Yes? That's what you have to cultivate first, by learning.
You have to have wisdom then first in order to do it.
You have to have the basics, and the basics Hashem gives everyone. Everyone is born with the basics, mental faculties, to be able to cultivate, not in one day, but over time, the yirat Hashem. Because even yirat Hashem, the fear of heaven, comes in various degrees. As I've explained many times in the past, one may begin with fear of punishment, and eventually come to the point of fear of God for its true sake. Because I love Him so much, how would I dare do something against Him? It's not because I'm afraid of Him. It's not because I'm afraid of the punishment. It's because I love Him so much that I wouldn't want to think of going against Him. That level is a very high level of yirat chet. It's the ultimate level. It's the real, true level. But it cannot be acquired without cultivating it. How does the one cultivate it? Of course, through learning Torah. But that has to be the goal. So what we're talking about is not necessarily one beginning with yirat chet. Maybe that's a little bit misleading what I've said. It's not that one begins with it really. It's that one cultivates it. One has an interest in pursuing that, in becoming it. And if that's his goal, if that's what's on his mind, then all the Torah that he will learn will help him reach that goal. Look at a child who's 9 years old, 10 years old, who's already in the age of chinuch. He does not have yirat chet so much. He heard about God, that God created the world, and he's learning Torah. He's learning in school. But he's supposed to be instructed that this is the purpose, that this is the tachlit. Why is he learning? He's not learning just to receive a degree to become a hacham. Even though one is allowed to think that way, but that's not the l'shem shamayim. That's not doing the mitzvah or learning the Torah for its true sake. It's true sake is because this is what Hashem expects of us, this is what He has asked of us to do, and this is what will help us accomplish whatever it is that we need to accomplish in this world.
Most of this stuff, it is not in our own gene. When we study the last week parasha, at the beginning, Hashem said that I got two nations
Right.
in your belly, in your stomach.
Sure.
One is going to be that, and the other one is going to be that.
Right. That's a good question. It appears from many pesukim, from many instances in the Tanakh and elsewhere, that certain things are predestined. In some ways, they're predestined. Here, Esav is the exact opposite of Yaakov, and he's already an opposite from the mother's womb.
Even in the Torah, when we study
Right.
Torah all over, we
Right.
don't see anything bad about Esau.
Right.
He was a good son, he was taking care of
In some ways, but he...
Even at the end of the part, like that,
Yeah.
although they cheat him a lot of it,
Right.
still
Yeah.
he made a peace with them. Like,
Nevertheless, he represents the forces of evil. He had a high concentration of that in him, in his neshama, and that is why Amalek comes from him. Amalek is the opposing force to Judaism, going contrary to God's plan. And Hashem allows this to happen. These two forces are up against each other throughout history, good versus bad. Nevertheless, every human being has free will. We all have tendencies and inclinations and certain desires and interests. And Esav too, he could have become a better person, he could have become a gentleman, but the Midrash says that in one day he managed to rape a girl that was engaged, he managed to kill someone, and managed to also deny Techiyat HaMetim.
but they still, I believe that God created.
God created everybody, but he could have held himself back and not killed the individual who he killed. Hashem did not tell him to do that. In other words, he has certain ta'avot, certain desires. We all do. Some people love to do certain things more than others. It's just a certain desire that people have. You have to control yourself. People who love food. There's some people who are crazy about food. Really. They are crazy about it. Some people, they don't have to eat so much. Each one has a difficulty or a struggle in some area, and that may be his challenge that he has to work on, amongst other things. So anyway, the point over here is that it makes no sense, Shlomo Melech says, it does not make sense for the Ksil, liknot chokhmah, to just go and buy or acquire the chokhmah if his heart is not there. In other words, he does not really plan to make anything of it other than just acquire a degree. Next pasuk is a very significant pasuk, very valuable in life. All the pasukim are important, but sometimes I like to stress one idea more than another because we can see it in our daily lives. That is pasuk Yud Zayin. B'chol ha'et ohev ha're'ah ve'ach letzara yivaled. At all times love a friend, for he is born a brother during times of adversity. Many ideas are suggested over here. Idea number one, b'chol ha'et, at all times, ohev ha're'ah, a true friend loves you at all times. It's not that he likes you on Monday but not on Tuesday. It's not like whenever he's in the mood, he will help you out. I'm not in the mood. A true friend, b'chol ha'et, ohev ha're'ah. That's one way of interpreting this verse. At all times, a true friend loves you at all times. The second part of the pasuk, ve'ach letzara yivaled, is very powerful. Friends, well, there's different kinds of them. There is an acquaintance, there is a friend. There's different words to describe various levels of friendship. There is a type of friend that is just like a brother. At a time of need, he is out there to help you. Ach letzara yivaled. And as the expression goes in many languages, you can only tell who a true friend is indeed at time of need. In time of need, that is when we can really tell who our true friends are. Some people claim they have many friends, but they're not friends. when they're tested during difficult times, they don't stand up. They don't come out to help you. A good friend, which is rare, can be seen litzara, can be seen at times of tzarot, of difficult times, of adversity. Rabbis tell us, "K'nei lecha chaver," acquire yourself a friend. In other words, this is something very valuable. One should make an effort to have a good friend that he can talk to, that he can speak to him about all his problems. It's something that not everybody has. A true friend is one who likes you just the way you are, with all your chisronot, with all your defects, with all your weaknesses. And we all have our weaknesses, so that's a true friend. He likes you despite the weaknesses. That's a good sign. This is an important pasuk because a lot of people think that a companion, a colleague, a classmate, these are friends. These are not friends. These are what we just call them: classmates, colleagues, companions. This is not a true friendship. A true friendship, just like a marriage, needs to be cultivated. One needs to invest in it, and that is why the rabbis tell us, "K'nei lecha." K'nei, you know what k'nei means? In Hebrew, it means to acquire with money, even if you have to spend money on your friend. That's what it means. That's why it says k'nei. By a rabbi, it says, "Aseh lecha rav." Make yourself a rabbi. Get yourself a rabbi. Choose one. By a friend, it says k'nei. Even if you have to buy, even if you have to spend money, if you have to work hard to make a friend. Yeah. Uh-huh. Bera'im? Sure. Yeah.
So if you find a friend, though, is he really a friend?
If you what?
If you're paying money for a friend, is that really a friend, or?
In other words, even if no, not paying meaning that you're just spending on him all the time. In other words, even if it costs you. I'll give you an example. What's an example of money? Let's say that two very close friends live 1,000 miles away. And one of the friends becomes ill. He's in bed for 2 weeks. And the friend buys a ticket and goes and visits him. He spent money to strengthen that friendship, to show that he cares. That's a very simple idea. Obviously, it would need to be mutual in some way. Not that one is doing all the spending and proving that he's a friend, the other one not doing anything. It's a whole subject. We can discuss about friendship a whole night, and I have a tape when we did interpersonal relationship. I think it's number 14, the last one of the series. How to tell who's a true friend. And if you haven't heard it, I recommend it. We go through in that shiur. We go through various ideas of how one can detect what are the ingredients for a true friendship.
It's very difficult because a lot of cases, a lot of stuff, people that...
A lot of hypocrisy, you mean?
Hypocrisy. A lot of those people that they're like
Yeah.
that, and the only time that you're going to find out who's your friend is when you're in a deep trouble.
Yeah,
And to see if they get-
but one of the most important ingredients for a friendship, if you want to get one, if you want to have a friend, is you need to be a friend. In order to receive one, you have to be one. So a person has to make the effort, and when that other side, when the other individual feels it, and the chemistry is there, and the respect is there, then it works out beautifully. All right, next pasuk, we've already discussed a little bit in the past the concept, and I think perhaps Shlomo Melech inserts it over here for good reason. That is the concept of collateral, being a guarantor for somebody else. We just spoke about friendship. Would you be willing to do everything and anything for your friend? Well, usually, except for one thing which is not recommended. Adam hasar lev tokea kaf orev aruba lifnei re'ehu. A person without sense, he's calling it somebody he doesn't have any sense, would clasp hands, in other words, would shake his hands, to become a surety before his neighbor, to become, in other words, a guarantor. Orev aruba, or an avon, is to secure a loan. Right? Reuben wants to lend money to Shimon. Shimon says, you know, it's going to be a while till I repay you. Reuven says, fine, give me a arev, somebody that will guarantee the loan. And Reuven and Shimon goes ahead and gets Levi to guarantee the loan. Now, if this is a lot of money, Levi is silly for doing that. Why is he silly? Because Shimon may run away, as many people have, and not pay up. It's tying up for this friend. There's no mitzvah, no obligation to do this. And history has shown it time after time that many people lost a lot of money for being a grantor. You don't have to do it. Now, father with a son, if he doesn't mind losing all that money for his son, that's fine. But you have to be prepared for yourself. I tell everybody who gives loans, somebody asks you for a loan, you should know Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. That's Murphy's Law. You give somebody a loan, there's a 50-50 chance that you're not going to see that money back. So therefore, if you can give that money without ever getting a heart attack that it's not coming back, go ahead and give it. If you're gonna lose sleep over it, don't give it. You have no mitzvah, no obligation whatsoever to give any money that you're going to feel terrible about if you don't get it back. Not even to your own brother, not even to your closest friend. Why should you get a heart attack? There's no mitzvah to get heart attacks. No, there isn't. So if you know that you won't be able to sleep and you're taking a chance, don't take the chance. Because if it can go wrong, it's going to go wrong. Yes?
Can you lend someone money out of the funds that you set aside for tzedakah?
No. No, you can't do that.
Even though...
No. You have to. That's a special fund for loans. Money that was already set aside for tzedakah is tzedakah.
But then you can say, well, if I don't get it back, then they'll consider it tzedakah.
If the man needs tzedakah, yes.
Well,
If the man needs tzedakah, then you could say, okay, you can make him feel good. Hey, this is a loan. You're sparing his dignity. And you in your mind, you say, if I don't get that money back, it's tzedakah. That's fine. If that man really needs tzedakah. You see what I mean? It's not somebody just needs a loan for he wants to remodel his kitchen.
No, it's like he really needs it.
If he's a poor man.
No, it's like a friend, but he really needs it.
Well, no, it has to be somebody that qualifies to be a recipient of tzedakah. Not just anybody qualifies for that. Then you could do it for that, yeah. So therefore he calls this man senseless, one who is willing to give somebody a guarantee. Commentaries tell us that sometimes people are very uncomfortable. They're ashamed to tell the person, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You know, it's embarrassing or it's hard. The commentaries tell us, rather be embarrassed now than have to later fight with him about the money. Which one do you prefer? You're better off feeling uncomfortable now than later on having to fight and try to get the money. So which one makes more sense? Don't give in. Ohev pesha, ohev matzah, magbiya pitcho mevakesh shaver. He who delights in transgressions delights in quarrels. He who speaks haughtily seeks disaster. I'll make it easier. Ohev pesha, ohev matzah, a person who likes to hurt people, in other words, who's unsensitive. Ohev pesha, he likes transgressions. This kind of a character, ohev matzah, he does not mind quarreling. He will not mind, instigating a fight. That's the type of individual. You have to stay away from such individuals who are careless, who are not serious, who commit transgressions. Because they will love fights. They will sue you and take you to court for every little thing. I'm sure you've met people like that. Well, you probably meet a lot of characters that will sue for anything, even if they're not right. Ohev matzah, people that like quarrels, that like lawsuits. They just they try to do anything they can. They are transgressors, that's what they are. Magbiya pitcho mevakesh shaver. This is a very interesting character. Magbiya pitcho, literally translated, means that he Here he translates, he who speaks haughtily. He raises his door, his mouth. An arrogant person. So the simple translation is that the person who's arrogant seeks disaster. In the end, Hashem will bring him down. And we've talked about this before. Arrogant people, in the end, will fall. But here, there's an additional idea. We just spoke about somebody being a guarantor. There are people who are show-offs. Magbiya pitcho. He wants to show off that he has all this money. And as a result of exposing himself, he's putting himself in a position where people will ask him to be a grantor. So as a result of him showing off, people will find out what he has, and they will insist or try to get his money. And then there's something worse. Because he's exposing himself, mevakesh shaver, he's bringing about his own downfall. In what way? Through an ayn hara, through an evil eye. And that's what people are unaware of sometimes. That when you expose yourself and you tell people how much you just made and how much this cost you and this and that and all the details, you're exposing yourself unnecessarily to an evil eye. And it can hurt. Yes?
2 questions.
Okay.
Unrelated, but what we just said.
Yeah.
Number 1, with respect to the litigious person, assume that his lawsuits are not frivolous lawsuits, but he legitimately has been wronged. And he does a lot of things in the community. A lot of business interests. If he's litigious and he's pursuing rights that he has within the civil system, does that fall within...
No, that does not fall within this, because what I failed to explain, perhaps, was the commentaries tell us, Beli sin'ah en meriva. If there's no hatred, there's no quarreling. It's only the quarrels that we're talking about, not just litigation, stems from a certain hatred, from a certain characteristic that a person has, a certain inclination to harm someone else. If that would not exist, there would not be the meriva. Why is there a meriva? Why is there a quarrel here? Go ahead and make a compromise. Go ahead and try to convince. Go ahead and try to do something in a pleasant way. Somebody rushing to a meriva, it stems from a certain sin'ah, a certain hatred. Or in the words of Mishlei, ohev pesha, ohev matzah. He's a transgressor. He likes transgressions. He therefore likes to litigation. But the one you're talking about is somebody who's been wronged. You know, that's the other extreme.
That's why people go to lawyers.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the one who loves to sue.
What if you love to sue, but you have cases to sue? But you have legitimate cases, for example.
Were you wronged? I mean, was this person...
I have a client,
right,
for example, just incurred some ridiculous charge from the phone company.
Okay.
Tiny amount, and they're charging everybody.
Right.
And now we're talking about bringing a class action.
Class action for a small amount?
Exactly.
It could be a mistake by the phone company. It's a mistake, no? Do you think they intentionally overcharged people by that amount?
100%.
How do you know that?
Because Verizon Wireless would not have done it if they did not intend to do it. They're doing it to everybody.
It could have been a computer mistake.
I'm not talking about that. It's policy. It's policy.
No, today the specific telephone company.
No. If the lawyer or if the experts can see that this was done intentionally, then they have to be taught a lesson.
Exactly.
That's different.
Oh.
Yeah, obviously. You know, there are companies that are out to cheat people.
So you're talking about just frivolous lawsuits going
Totally,
to start something when nothing.
totally frivolous, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
My second question
Right.
relates
This is
to
very common.
Yeah.
relates to ayin hara.
Right.
Is this an old wives' tale? I've heard it different ways. I've heard Hasidic Rebbe's say ayin hara. I've heard Litvish Rebbe's say it's an old wives' tale. And now I don't get it.
Oh no. Everybody is in agreement that ayin hara exists. And this is actually one of the things that everybody, Sephardic and Litvish and Hasidic, this is one of the only things they all agree on, that there is such a thing as ayin hara. There used to be special women in Eastern Europe, in Lithuanian circles too, that were experts in removing an ayin hara. So you don't have to go to Morocco for that. You can go to Eastern Europe, and you see it in Eastern Europe literature, that people used to seek somebody to release them from this ayin hara, from this evil eye. The Gemara speaks about ayin hara, the Zohar speaks about ayin hara. It's been a problem. Certain people have it, not everybody has it, and you have to be careful with it. And if you got it, somebody gave it to you, you can go ahead and ask somebody who knows how to release it to release it. At another time I'll tell you. Yeah.
Do you agree with these eyes in the hand that people are putting up?
No, these things are usually not that effective. I'll tell you later. I'll tell you another time why all these things, red strings and all these things.
Yeah.
That's for I'll tell you another time, so we don't get off the subject.
Is that bubble mice or all that?
Not exactly. No, it's not bubble mice completely, but it doesn't really help that much. It's for a reason. They use it for a reason. Yes.
You're absolutely right. Some people tell you do this, do that, and it's not effective. One rabbi told me,
Yeah.
take eye of a fish and hang it to the corner of the house. The fish eye is still in the house, and I was able to.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to go to Kabbalah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Ikesh lev lo yimtza tov v'nepach b'lshono yipol bera'ah. He who is of a perverse heart will find no good, and he who has an hypocritical tongue will fall into evil. So in this pasuk, we're talking about a perverse heart. What is a perverse heart? One, as in Hebrew, he's called she'en piv velibo shavim. His heart and his mouth are not the same. He talks one way, and he feels or he thinks in a different way. He's an ikesh lev. It's a perverse heart. Such an individual will find no good. Same thing with v'ne'epach b'lshono, one who's a hypocrite. Same idea. Yipol bera'ah, will fall into evil. All these individuals who think that they can mislead people, they can act in one way and feel a different way, in the end they will fall. They will fall actually in the same plot that they were plotting against someone. To do something into an individual, many times they will fall in that same plot that they plotted for someone else. Next pasuk, Yolet kesile tugalo velo yismach avi naval. Translation of it: He who begets a fool, gave birth to a child who has become a fool. Nobody's really born a fool. Does so to his sorrow. Neither will the father of a vile man rejoice. Now, the simple translation means that one who has given birth, raised a fool, it is very sorrowful. It is very disappointing. There's no rejoicing for a father of a vile person, a naval. What does that mean? Rabbis tell us, tsar gidul banim. Raising children is painful. It's not easy. Raising any child. Between the diapers, between the expenses and the tuition, you know what it's like. So, what is the nechama? What is the consolation that every parent has from all these expenses and investment in his child? That something beautiful will come out of him, something nice. When that does not come true, it is one of the greatest sorrowful things for a parent. And that's what he's pointing out. He says, you want to be careful how you raise your child. Because if you're going to bring to this world and raise a kesil, it's going to be a tuga. It's one of the greatest sorrows that a parent has. As we've pointed out several times, that the greatest source of nachat is tiferet banim, avotam, or the other way. In other words, when the child can point to a father, to a grandfather, look who's my father, look who's my grandfather. When the father or grandfather can point to his child and his grandson, that is the ultimate source of true Jewish nachat, happiness, when one's children and grandchildren are going in the ways of one's forefathers. So the opposite of nachat is tuga, is sorrow. So one needs to take this seriously, that if one's child is not really doing things right, that he should perhaps seek professional help. But besides the professional help, the rabbis always encourage us to pray. There's nothing more powerful than prayer. Besides our ishtadlut and our efforts to bring about a good chinuch for the child, one needs to continuously pray. Yes?
One question, when you look at from the beginning,
Yeah?
Adam and Abba, he had two sons, one killed each other. Abraham, being such a great man, had the son Ishmael. Noah had such a good kid that, like the said one of the kids. Do you know?
Sure.
All of the people that when you come over there, like some of them, sometimes some of them, they're out of your control. Do you know? There's just no way you can do nothing.
Right. That's why you have to pray a lot. You're right. It's very difficult. You have to pray a lot. Lev sameach yetiv geha v'ruach nechehat yabesh garem. A happy heart enhances one's brilliance. Okay, I disagree with that. Geha really means the body, not one's brilliance. And a broken spirit dries the bones. Yeah, that's correct. He's talking about a happy heart, a happy disposition. You know that some people by nature are despondent, can easily become depressed. It's just in their nature. Nothing really has happened to them. It's just that they're either moody, or that's the way they feel this way. In English they say they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Yeah. Lev sameach, a happy heart, is yetiv geha. It is healthy for the body. A lot of people would have lived several more years, perhaps, had they had a happy disposition. Happy. And what happiness are we talking about? Which is the greatest source of happiness? Sameach bechilko, one who's content with his lot, with whatever he has. A rabbi once sent somebody who wanted to know what pain is, what true pain is. And he sent him to Reb Zusha. Reb Zusha was in the Bet Midrash. Reb Zusha was a very, very poor man. Very poor man. He barely made ends meet. And he sent it to Rabbi Zusha to describe to him, give him a lesson as to what pain is. And he asked Rabbi Zusha, tell me, Rabbi Zusha, do you know what pain is? He says, I don't know what you're talking about. I never experienced pain in my life. This is a poor man who has nothing, doesn't own anything, but because of his bitachon in Hashem, because of his simchat ha'chaim, never experienced pain. What is pain? Beautiful midah, an important midah, not only healthy for the body, healthy for the neshama, healthy all around. A lev sameach, a happy heart. Whereas the opposite is ruach nechehat yabesh garem. A broken spirit dries the bones. We've spoken about good news, bringing good news to dashen atzem. Good news has the ability to strengthen the bones. Ruach necheha is just the opposite. A broken spirit dries the bones. You have to be careful how to give bad news to someone too. You could break his heart. So we see from this pasuk how you can have an individual, the same individual, if he has the right attitude, a happy heart, he will have one kind of life, and if he Khalila has a ruach necheah, he will have a totally different kind of life. What did it all depend on? Not how much money he had in his bank accounts, in his savings accounts, in his mutual funds, but on how happy or sad he was. That's all. Just in this. Okay, we have just a couple more pesukim. Shochad mechek rasha yikach lehatot orchot mishpat. He will take a bribe from a wicked man's bosom to pervert the roads of justice. Okay, in a different translation, Shochad mechek rasha. We're talking about one who accepts bribery from a wicked man. Why is he saying accepting bribery from a wicked man? Because the one who gives it is wicked. The Torah tells us be careful with giving or accepting bribes, because it blinds the judges. It blinds even the righteous. So therefore, shochad mechek rasha, the one who gives it, is called a rasha. It is just as bad to give as to receive. Even though the judge should not receive, because it's going to sway him, the one who is giving is wicked. That's why he calls it shochad mechek rasha. Yikach le'atot orchot mishpat, he calls it mechek rasha because one may give it secretly, one may give it privately, and one may say, the judge may say on the receiving end, okay, I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to play favoritism over here. It won't help him. Le'atot orchot mishpat. Very, very possible this is what's going to happen. It's going to sway the judgment, the roads of justice. You have to be careful with any bribery. Even flowers, even a lunch. Can we go out for lunch? All these things tend to have some influence if the individual you're going with has to be a judge. Wisdom is directly in front of an understanding man, but the eyes of a fool are at the end of the earth. What this means is that a person who searches Chokhmah, who wants to learn Torah, wants to learn any Chokhmah, he will always find a class. He will always find somebody to teach him. Iksil, a fool who does not really have interest, when you ask him about learning, his eyes are b'ksei aretz, at the end of the earth, at the end of the world. In other words, everything is hard for him. Everything is so far. Everything is so difficult. It's a very bad attitude. And that is because he has no true desire. One who has a desire will do whatever he can. He will find out whatever he can. This is an important lesson that I tell young couples who are just getting married. The first, the most important ingredient for a successful relationship is the desire to succeed. Do you both desire to succeed? Hopefully the answer is yes. If that's the case, then if problems arise, you will seek solutions. You will not just give up. And what does it say in English? Throw in the towel? Something like that? Yeah, that's it. It's like a paper plate. Let's divorce and start and get something else. You have to have a desire to succeed. So it pnei mevin chokhmah, one who seeks chokhmah, it's like in front of him. He will know where to get it. But a fool, b'ksei aretz, fool who has no interest, it's because his attitude is such that it's too difficult, it's too far removed. And that leads us, well, actually before the next pasuk, there's a commentary that says that what's the difference between a chacham and exil? Exil, a fool looks at this library, he says, when am I going to finish all these sefarim? When am I going to learn this? It's very difficult. It's far for him. He just sees all of it. He sees how difficult it is. What is a chacham? Chacham says, I'm going to learn. I'm going to begin with one. Then the next day he goes on to the next one. And before you know it, he's covered all of it. And that is exactly what happens in the 7.5-year cycle of Shas. Before you know it, you've covered over 2,000 dapim. 2,700 to be exact. Of dapim in a little over 7 years. If you're consistent and you don't give up and you don't look at the magnitude of it, you take one page at a time. And many people have done it recently. Next pasuk, Ka'as le'aviv ben kesilu memer le'yolato. Similar to what we saw before, a foolish son causes anger to his father and bitterness to the woman who bore him, to his mother. That he angers his father, obviously a fool will anger his father. Not only his paternal father, not only his biological father, but his father in heaven too. But what's interesting is he describes it as memer le'yolato. To his mother, it's worse. It's bitterness. Why is the mother bitterness? Because the rabbis tell us, what is the sechar, what is the reward of women in this world? They don't have all the mitzvot that the men have. That they send their children to school. That they support their husbands in learning Torah. That is part of their reward. So for a woman to see her son going against all that she has taught him, it brings a tremendous amount of bitterness. They have a lot to lose, parents who stick their child in a public school, not realizing where that child is really headed, just because they want to save some money. It's going to be a tremendous source of disappointment and sorrow later on. Pasuk Chavav, Gam anosh latzadik lo tov lehakot nedivim ale yosher. To punish also the righteous man is not good, to strike the generous who possess uprightness. What he's talking about over here is that even a tzaddik has to be careful not to be too strict with others. Rabbis tell us a tzaddik has to be careful with his midot too. La'avira midotav, to be giving, to give in, and to be extremely careful. Lo limsor din al chavero. Whoever asks Hashem, punish him, punish that guy for me. The man who asks for the punishment will be punished first. One should never ask Hashem to punish someone, because they start with him. You think so highly of yourself that you're asking for somebody else to be punished? So tzaddikim, that's what he's saying over here. Tzaddikim have to be also very careful in how they judge others and how they treat others. Rabbis tell us, Kol mi shechavero ne'nash b'gilalo, lo machnisim oto lemichlitzato shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whoever's friend was punished because of him, they will not allow him to enter close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, you should have forgiven him. You should have not insisted or demanded certain things. And because he was punished because of your actions, then you are to blame.
So someone who gives an iron horror is also punished?
Well, people who give an ayin hara don't always know that they have an ayin hara. You see, so it's not really, they're not being punished for it unless they act upon something, because it stems from a certain jealousy or certain envious character, or that you're not happy for somebody else's happiness. So it's just a bad trait, but you're not taking any action that you're going to be punished for. Anyway, so tzaddikim have to be careful with how they deal with others in the same way that every other individual has to be careful. They're not exempt. They actually have to be even more careful. He who has knowledge keeps back his words, and he whose breath is there is a man of understanding. Shlomo Melech here is talking about the value of keeping quiet, of using your words properly, knowing when to talk, when not to talk. That is a man of understanding. That is a man who has knowledge, that he knows when to say, when not to say, what to say. Words should not just be used freely. They're very powerful, they're very dangerous. You cannot take them back. And therefore, the last pasuk of the perek is Gam evil macharish chacham yechashev, otem sefatav navon. He who silences, even a fool, is considered a wise man. I don't agree with this translation. Even the fool, when he is silent, is considered a wise man. One who shuts his lips is a man of understanding. A fool, so long as he doesn't open up his mouth, everybody thinks he's intelligent. Why? He's wearing a tuxedo and a tie, and he looks like a professional businessman, as long as he kept his mouth shut. Once he opens up his mouth, then you realize that, what kind of a fool he is. He made a fool of himself. Anyway, rabbis tell us, Kol yamai gadalti ben hachachamim velo matzati midat tova min hashtika. I've grown up many years amongst the Chachamim, and of all the good midot that I learned from the Chachamim, one of the most valuable midot was midat hashetika. What's the saying in English about silence is golden, speech is silver, but silence is golden? Speech is very powerful too. Sometimes you need to speak, you need to communicate, you need to give musar, rebuke. You cannot hold yourself back. But silence is golden. There will be many, many times when if you hold back your tongue, if you keep your mouth shut, you will prevent a major disaster at home, a quarrel. If you're angry, especially when you're angry, calm down, go have a cup of coffee, take a walk, and then come back and say whatever you had to say. As I told you with the story with the rabbi who came home, the wife tells him, your son broke something. He waited for half an hour. He just came back from a long day at work. He was tired. And he was maybe even hungry. And now, to deal with his son, he was afraid that he may overreact. He waited for half an hour till he calmed down. He had dinner, then he went over and was able to deal with his son in a professional way. So shetika, silence, is a tremendous discipline in many, many areas of life. And other times, of course, one needs to talk. There's just no way out of it. You cannot always keep your mouth shut. But even for a fool, even for a person who does not really have too much understanding, it's a tremendous asset. They won't be able to figure out that he's a fool. But even for us, who Baruch Hashem have a little bit of understanding, we have to value silence. Silence is something that is perhaps one of the most powerful tools in dealing with quarrels, in dealing with problems, in not having to answer to every insult, to every offense, to every situation. Okay, fine, we'll talk about it later. Let's go on to something else. In that way, we may be able to save ourselves a lot of heartaches. B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, we'll continue next week.